There comes a moment when the soul stirs before the body does. But if you wait for courage to come, it will not. If you wait for permission, you'll grow old in the waiting. We often sit with our hands folded and our hearts heavy, waiting for that invisible spark to show up and light us from within, waiting for the wave of motivation to rise and carry us toward our goals like a ship caught in divine wind. We believe that one day we'll wake up ready, hungry, filled with the energy to chase down every dream we've shelved. But that day rarely comes, and when it does, it vanishes just as quickly as it arrived, leaving us once again in the quiet company of doubt and hesitation. Here's the truth we don't like to admit. Motivation is not the engine, it's the passenger. It doesn't start the journey, it joins us along the way. You don't wait to feel ready before you begin. You begin, and the feeling of readiness follows. This is the uncomfortable, liberating truth of real progress. You move first. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are unreliable companions. They rise and fall with your mood, your energy, the weather outside, the opinions of others, the number of hours you slept, the last thing you saw on your phone. If you anchor your actions to a feeling, you're letting a storm decide whether your ship sails. You're handing the wheel of your life to a force you cannot control. But action, simple, humble, quiet action, is within your reach, always. You can sit down and write one sentence, even if you don't feel like a writer. You can lace your shoes and take a walk, even if you feel heavy with discouragement. You can pick up the phone and make that hard call, even if your voice trembles. And when you do, when you take that first step, you begin to stir something deeper than motivation. You begin to prove to yourself that you are capable, even when you feel unsure. Momentum builds not in inspiration, but in repetition. One small action today leads to another tomorrow, and as the days begin to stack up, your brain starts to believe a new story. Not I can't or I'm not ready, but I'm already doing it. Action builds evidence, and evidence builds belief. You become the kind of person who shows up, not because you're always excited, but because you've decided to act regardless of how you feel. Think about a cold morning when your bed is warm and the world feels sharp outside the covers. You don't want to get up, you're not motivated, but then your feet touch the floor. You shuffle to the sink, you wash your face, you breathe, and suddenly you're in motion. You haven't even had coffee yet, but your body has begun the day. That's the secret right there. Start the thing and the feeling follows. We have it backward because we've been fed stories that glorify inspiration. We celebrate the moment the artist felt moved to paint, or the runner crossed the finish line, or the entrepreneur had the idea, but we ignore the dull, daily decisions, the hours at the desk, the miles in the rain, the emails, the practice, the effort that came without applause. That's where the real fire is built. Not in the dramatic moment, but in the decision to act without one. Some of the most life-changing things you'll do will not come wrapped in excitement. They'll come as quiet choices to begin, to continue, to try again. When you decide to act before you feel ready, you build trust with yourself. You show yourself that your word means something, that you can be counted on by the person who matters most, you. And once you begin, you create space for motivation to arrive. You invite it. You build the conditions for it to grow. Think of a garden. Motivation is like sunlight. It's beautiful when it's there, but no flower grows from light alone. It needs roots, soil, water, your action, your discipline, your daily return to the task. That's what allows motivation to matter when it does appear. This isn't to say you won't ever feel excited. You will. There will be days when the fire inside is strong. But those days will be built on the foundation you laid when the fire was nowhere to be found. And that's the life you want. Not one ruled by waiting for the feeling, but one shaped by your choice to act in spite of it. You don't need to be ready. You need to begin. You don't need to feel brave. You need to move. Because once you do, something happens. Not instantly, not magically, but certainly. You start to become someone who doesn't wait for permission from your feelings. You start to become someone who trusts motion over mood, effort over inspiration. And you start to realize that action is not just how things get done, it's how you become who you're meant to be. Desire is the spark, but discipline is the flame that keeps burning long after the thrill has faded. Desire is loud and seductive. It makes promises in the quiet of the night, whispers dreams into our ears, paints grand visions of what life could be. It dances in our minds when we watch others succeed, when we imagine our name on the cover, our feet on the stage, our hands building the thing we were meant to create. Desire is beautiful, but it is fleeting. You've felt it before, that rush of inspiration that makes you want to change everything overnight. You buy the notebook, the gym shoes, the camera, the course. You clean your desk, you plan your schedule. You tell someone, this time it's different. And for a little while, you're flying. But then something happens. Not something big, just something ordinary. You get tired, you get bored, you don't see results. The energy fades, the passion dips, and then the question comes, do I still want this? That's where most people stop, because the feeling is gone, and they believe that if the feeling is gone, the path must be wrong. But that's not true. In fact, that's the very point where the real path begins. Discipline doesn't care about how you feel. It doesn't beg for excitement. It doesn't need applause. It shows up with its sleeves rolled and its jaw set. It says, I don't need a reason to keep going. I've already decided to. Discipline doesn't wait for the stars to align or the mood to strike. It gets up when the alarm rings. It sits down at the desk. It writes the sentence, lifts the weight, says no to the temptation, not because it feels good in the moment, but because it honors something deeper than feeling, commitment. Desire wants the result. Discipline loves the process. Desire chases comfort and reward. Discipline builds grit in the silence. When you rely on desire, your progress will always be inconsistent. You'll start strong and stop short. You'll do it when you feel like it and skip it when you don't. You'll be a slave to your emotions, constantly swinging between motivation and guilt, action and avoidance. But when you build discipline, you build something more valuable than energy. You build identity. You become someone who keeps their word. You become someone who follows through. And that is power. Real, grounded power. Not the fleeting high of motivation, but the steady confidence of someone who knows, I can do hard things even when I don't want to. Discipline is not glamorous. It doesn't shout. It doesn't announce itself. It's quiet. It's boring. It's often lonely. But it is also how everything that matters gets made. Books are not written in a weekend of passion. Muscles are not built in one explosive workout. Relationships are not strengthened by grand gestures alone. All of it, every meaningful thing, is built through the slow, repeated practice of showing up again and again when you could just as easily walk away. There will be mornings when you want to stay in bed, nights when you want to quit, moments when everything in you says, what's the point? And it's there, in that space, where discipline speaks loudest, not in words, but in motion, in standing up, in opening the laptop, in choosing the hard thing over the easy out, in proving, once again, that you are not your mood, you are your values. Desire can be stolen by a bad day. Discipline endures. Desire can be crushed by failure. Discipline learns and returns. Desire wants instant gratification. Discipline is patient and plays the long game. And here's the gift that discipline gives you in time. It births desire again. But this time, the desire is rooted. It's not a flash. It's a fire that grows stronger with every day you keep going. And eventually, the work becomes part of you. It stops being something you have to do. It becomes something you are. Discipline teaches you that freedom is not found in doing whatever you want, whenever you want. Real freedom is knowing that you can trust yourself, that you are not ruled by laziness or temptation or the need to always feel good before you act. Real freedom is doing what you said you'd do, even when the emotion that made the promise has long disappeared. You won't always want to do the work, but if you show up anyway, you'll build a life that desire alone could never give you. You'll stop chasing motivation and start creating momentum. And you'll understand that the life you want is not waiting for a perfect moment. It's being carved, one disciplined choice at a time. There's a pressure in the air, silent, invisible, yet heavy enough to shape our decisions. A pressure to be flawless, to get it right the first time, to meet impossible standards without ever letting anyone see you stumble. This pressure doesn't always come from others. Often it's born from within, from the stories we've told ourselves about what success should look like, how achievement must feel, and how we'll be judged if we fall short. So we hesitate, we wait, we plan endlessly, polish obsessively, and delay taking action until everything feels perfect. But perfection is a mirage. It looks close, almost touchable, shimmering in the distance, but the closer you move toward it, the more it recedes. You finish a task only to notice a flaw. You reach a goal only to set another. The bar keeps rising and your self-worth keeps sinking. Trying to be perfect is not just exhausting, it's paralyzing. It convinces you that it's better not to begin than to risk being seen in your becoming. And yet, the truth is simple and freeing. You do not owe the world perfection. You never did. No one is holding a measuring stick against your life, waiting for you to reach some mythical height before you're allowed to feel proud. No one has lived your days, carried your burdens, or survived your quiet struggles. So why hold yourself to standards set by people who know nothing of your journey? What you do owe, however, what you owe deeply and personally, is progress. You owe it to yourself to keep moving forward, even if your steps are small, even if they're uneven, even if some days feel like you're crawling through fog. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to get everything right. You just need to grow, to be a little further along than you were yesterday, to reach for the next rung on the ladder. Even if your hands are shaking, progress is honest. It allows for mistakes. It expects them. It's not here to shame you for failing. It's here to celebrate that you tried. And every attempt, no matter how messy or incomplete, teaches you something you wouldn't have learned by standing still. Perfection offers the illusion of safety, but progress offers real transformation. It says, let's get better, let's move again, let's rise slowly but surely without apology. This mindset is not just kinder, it's sustainable. Perfection will burn you out. It's rigid and demanding. It punishes missteps and demands more while offering little in return. But progress honors effort. It celebrates resilience. It shows up when motivation fades. It says, I'm proud of you for showing up. I'm proud of you for doing the work, even when it's hard. There's a kind of quiet power that lives in progress. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need applause, but it changes you. Day by day, you begin to notice your own strength. You look back and see how far you've come. You stop needing validation from others because you've built a relationship with yourself that is rooted in truth, effort, and growth. And when you release the pressure to be perfect, you give yourself permission to be real. You give yourself room to learn, to evolve, to breathe. You allow yourself the freedom to take risks without fear of judgment, to explore without shame, to fail with dignity. And failure, when held with compassion, becomes a stepping stone, not a dead end. You're not here to impress the world. You're here to fulfill your own potential. That doesn't mean being the best. It means becoming your best. And that version of you, stronger, wiser, more aligned, can only emerge through consistent, imperfect progress. There will be days when you backslide, when the old habits return, when the doubt creeps in. That's okay. That's part of it. Progress is not a straight line. It's a winding, messy path full of lessons and second chances. What matters is that you keep returning to the work, that you keep choosing to grow, even when it would be easier to give up. So stop waiting to be perfect. Start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can, not because the world is watching, but because you are. You are the one who lives with your choices, who feels the weight of your own dreams. Who knows what's been left undone? Honor that, not with flawless performance, but with honest, steady progress. You may never reach perfection, but if you keep showing up, you'll reach something better. Your real, whole, beautifully human self, unapologetically in motion. Fear is not the enemy we've made it out to be. It's not the villain in the story of your life. It doesn't creep in to destroy your dreams or block your blessings. It shows up more often than not as a signal, a flicker of life letting you know you found the edge of your comfort zone. That edge is not your limit. It's your invitation. The presence of fear doesn't mean stop. It means something important is happening here. It means pay attention. We tend to treat fear like a wall, a final barrier that says, this far, no further. But fear is rarely that solid. It's more like a shadow. It looks bigger and darker from far away. Step closer and it shifts. Walk through it and it vanishes. The mistake isn't in feeling afraid. The mistake is in letting that fear freeze you in place, letting it turn into stagnation. Stagnation is the real danger, not being afraid, but staying still because of it. When you let fear become a reason to delay, avoid, or shrink, you don't protect yourself. You bury yourself. You tuck your hopes into the corners of your life and convince yourself that now is not the time, that you'll move when the fear is gone. But fear doesn't leave. It changes shape. It lingers. It waits. And the longer you sit in place, the harder it becomes to rise. In time, you stop calling it fear at all. You start calling it realism or being responsible or just not the right season. But underneath all that language is still one thing: avoidance. People fear failure. They fear judgment. They fear not being good enough, not being accepted, not having control. But here's what's more dangerous than any of those things: waking up one day and realizing you've been alive for years without actually living. That you let your whole life be designed by your discomfort. That your actions were dictated by the things you tried not to feel. Stagnation doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like procrastination, endlessly preparing but never launching. Sometimes it looks like comfort, sticking with what's known even when it no longer serves you. Sometimes it's masked by success, climbing a ladder that leans against the wrong wall. And while all of that is happening, fear stays quiet. It doesn't have to shout. It knows it already won. But here's the thing: fear doesn't disappear by being ignored. It shrinks by being faced. Not all at once, not with a big leap, but with small, steady steps toward the thing you're avoiding. Each step tells your body we can do hard things. Each act of courage, no matter how small, chips away at the illusion that fear is stronger than you, because it's not. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's action in the presence of it. You can be terrified and still take the first step. You can be uncertain and still move forward. Growth doesn't come from certainty. It comes from motion. You grow when you stretch, when you wobble, when you walk through what scares you and find that you are still here, still breathing, still becoming. Fear often shows up right where your life is about to expand. Right before the breakthrough, before the new job, the hard conversation, the dream you've been holding close to your chest. It's not a sign to retreat, it's a sign that the moment matters. It means something is on the line, and that's okay. Let it matter. Let it scare you. Just don't let it stop you. There's a kind of decay that comes with stillness. When you ignore your calling, your creativity rusts, your joy dims, your sense of purpose shrinks into routine. And the worst part is, you convince yourself that you're okay, that this numb, neutral existence is fine. But deep down, something aches. Not because you failed, but because you never tried. You weren't born to be fearless. You were born to be bold. There's a difference. Fearlessness is a myth, but boldness, that's a choice. It's a decision to keep walking even when the voice in your head tells you to sit down. It's knowing that forward motion, however small, is always better than standing still and calling it safe. Some of the most remarkable people in the world carry fear with them daily. They just don't let it decide the direction of their lives. They don't hand over the map. They thank fear for showing up. It means they're pushing limits, and then they act anyway. You are going to feel afraid. You are going to doubt yourself. You are going to question whether you have what it takes. And none of that disqualifies you. What matters is whether you keep moving. What matters is whether you choose to grow instead of waiting for the fear to leave. Because it may never leave, but you can learn to carry it without being carried by it. Fear might visit often, but stagnation only stays if you let it. Don't give it a place to rest. Don't build it a home. Let fear walk beside you if it must, but make sure it's your courage holding the compass. Tiredness is real. It sits in your bones, weighs on your shoulders, and fogs your thoughts. It creeps in quietly at first, after long days, hard weeks, or endless responsibilities, and then grows heavier when life keeps asking more of you than you feel you can give. It's not just physical. Sometimes it's emotional, mental, or spiritual. The kind of tiredness that doesn't go away with sleep. The kind that lingers even when you're doing nothing, and when that kind of exhaustion sets in, the temptation is strong to stop trying altogether, to surrender your goals, your dreams, your discipline, and say, I'm too tired to keep going. But here's the truth. Tiredness, while real and valid, cannot be your excuse to stop showing up for your life. There is a difference between rest and resignation. Rest is essential. You need it to heal, to replenish, to gather strength for the road ahead. But rest should never become retreat. It should never turn into a shield you hide behind to avoid the discomfort of effort. Because if you let tiredness become your reason to quit, it will eventually become your reason for everything. Your reason not to start, not to try, not to risk, not to grow. And over time, you won't just be tired, you'll be stuck. There's a weariness that comes from doing hard things, but there's also a deeper weariness that comes from doing nothing at all, from abandoning your path, from living misaligned with your purpose. That kind of tiredness drains your spirit more than any long day ever could. Because when you give up on what matters, you carry a silent grief, the grief of lost potential, of knowing you could have been more, done more, if only you had found the strength to keep going. People often think that the road to success or fulfillment is paved with motivation and energy, that you have to feel powerful every day to keep moving. But real progress isn't made in those moments of high energy. It's made in the tired ones. It's made in the days you don't want to get up, but do. In the nights you'd rather quit, but instead you take one more step. Those small acts of resilience, stacked day after day, build something unshakable. They build character. They build consistency. And eventually, they build the life you were chasing to begin with. Tiredness is a signal, yes, but it's not always a stop sign. Sometimes it's just a checkpoint, a moment to pause, to breathe, to ask yourself, am I tired because I'm doing too much? Or because I'm not doing enough of what fuels me? There is a kind of fatigue that comes not from overworking, but from underliving, from ignoring your passions, from staying too long in situations that drain your soul. That's a tiredness that rest alone can't fix. That kind of tiredness demands a shift, a change in direction, a commitment to something truer. There will always be days when your energy dips, when life presses down harder than usual, when your body aches and your mind is cloudy. Those days matter. They are part of the human experience. But if you wait until you are fully rested, fully ready, fully energized before you move forward, you may wait forever. Because life doesn't pause while you recover. Opportunities don't freeze in place while you gather strength. The world keeps turning, and you must find ways to turn with it, even if slowly. This doesn't mean push yourself until you break. It doesn't mean ignore your limits. It means you recognize that part of being strong is knowing when to rest and when to rise anyway, when to push through discomfort, not because it feels good, but because the alternative is to let your tiredness write your story. You are allowed to be exhausted. You are allowed to struggle, but you are not allowed to let that tiredness become the excuse for why you didn't show up for your own life. You owe yourself the effort even on the hardest days, especially on the hardest days, because those are the days that define you, not in how fast you move, but in the fact that you kept moving at all. Tiredness will come and go, but the moments you fight through it, those are the ones you'll remember. Those are the ones that will shape you. They'll teach you that you are not weak because you're tired. You are strong because you kept going despite it. You adjusted your pace, not your purpose. And in doing so, you honored the deepest truth about resilience, that it's not about never being tired. It's about never letting tiredness decide who you'll become. There's a quiet ache that lives in the hearts of many, an ache not caused by what they've done, but by what they never dared to do. It is the weight of unlived potential, the dreams never pursued, the talents left dormant, the visions that once burned brightly but were slowly buried under excuses, fear, and delay. It's a weight that grows heavier with time, whispering louder as the years pass. You could have done more. You were meant for more. Potential is a promise, not a guarantee. It's the raw material of greatness, the seed of something powerful waiting to be shaped by courage, effort, and time. But if it remains untouched, unexplored, unchallenged, it begins to decay. It becomes a haunting reminder of what might have been. And nothing stings quite like the realization that what you could have become was lost. Not to tragedy or misfortune, but to your own inaction. Many people live safely within the lines of their comfort zones. They follow predictable paths, fulfill expectations, meet the minimum requirements of existence. They silence the voice within that calls them higher, convinced they have time. Time to start later, time to try when things settle down, time to be brave when fear loosens its grip. But the cruel truth is that time waits for no one. And the longer you wait to act on your potential, the more you teach yourself to live without it. Unlived potential doesn't scream. It doesn't demand attention. It waits in silence, patient, loyal, and painful. You carry it with you in every mundane task that could have had meaning, in every moment where you chose distraction over creation, in every opportunity you passed up, not because you lacked ability, but because you lacked belief. And as those moments stack up, so does the regret. Regret isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a question you can't answer. What if I had tried? What if I had believed in myself? What if I hadn't let fear dictate my choices? These questions follow you in the quiet hours, long after the chances have passed, and they're heavier than any failure, because failure, at least, is honest. It says you dared. It says you showed up. But regret says you never gave yourself the chance. We were not born just to survive. We were born to create, to grow, to stretch the edges of what we think is possible. There is something inside you, an idea, a gift, a message, a movement that no one else can express in the exact way you can. That uniqueness is your power, and when you leave it unexplored, you deny not just yourself, but the world of something extraordinary. But the danger of potential is that it feels comfortable. It feels good to know you could do something amazing, that you might be great at something. So we nurture that possibility without ever proving it. We become addicted to dreaming instead of doing. We mistake planning for progress. And over time, we become more attached to the idea of who we could be than to the effort it would take to become that person. Realizing your potential is not a passive process. It takes risk. It takes discipline. It takes showing up when you're scared, pushing forward when you're tired, and doing the work when no one is clapping. It takes choosing growth over ease, truth over comfort, and purpose over procrastination. And yes, it might mean failing, but failing is far more honorable than never beginning. There's nothing more tragic than a life half lived. To look back and see that the version of yourself you could have been never had a chance to breathe because you were too busy waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect feeling. Perfection is the enemy of progress. The only thing you need to do is begin, imperfectly, uncertainly, but boldly. Because the cost of unlived potential is not just regret, it's identity. Every time you abandon your gifts, you lose a little piece of yourself. You dull your spirit, you quiet your voice, and eventually you start to forget the dreams you once held so close. You convince yourself you never really wanted them in the first place. But deep down, you know better. The clock is always ticking. And while it's never too late to start, it is possible to wait too long. The window of opportunity doesn't stay open forever. Life will continue whether or not you decide to show up for it. But there's something deeply powerful about choosing now. Choosing to rise, choosing to act, choosing to turn the raw material of your potential into something real. Because when you do, you don't just escape regret, you build pride. You look in the mirror and see someone who didn't let fear win, someone who lived not just by obligation, but with intention. And that kind of life, full of effort and courage and imperfect progress, is worth everything. So, child of thunder and silence, child of fear and fire, force yourself. Force yourself to rise, to write, to speak, to build, to change, not because it is easy, not because you feel brave, but because inside you burn something too holy to bury. A life unlived is not peace. It is regret wearing a smile. Don't make your dreams the prettiest ghosts in your graveyard. Stand up, step forward, take action. Even if your knees shake, let the world feel your footsteps.